tube really into our body. So if you are in the digestive tube, it's kind of weird to think that this is actually can be technically classified as outside. Because this tube is not really part of our body, this is just where food is going to travel through, and as it's traveling through that tube, it's getting broken down, and then it has to move from that tube, which is technically part of the outside environment, into our body, which would be into the bloodstream. So that process of moving things from the digestive tube into our body, into the bloodstream, is called absorption. And the vast majority of absorption is going to happen in the small intestine, where you actually get the movement into the bloodstream. So anyway, in order to allow that to happen, the small intestine has lots of folds, which increases the surface area. So the structures that I had you add to the small intestine, the villi and the lacteal, both of those are shown on this model here. So these structures that are sticking up right here, these represent the villi, which are kind of like finger-like extensions that stick up off of these folds. So those folds that are found in the small intestine that are there for increasing surface area, there's actually more folds on top of the folds. And then it even gets to another layer of folds on top of these. But for now, we're just going to talk about these, which are the villi. So these finger-like projections sticking up, which would actually go to the inside of the tube. It would go to the loop. It would be sticking inside the lumen of the small intestine. These are the villi. Then the other structure that you have is the lacteal, which we've already covered this. So the lacteals are part of the lymphatic system. So if you remember, through that process of absorption, which is breaking down things and then moving them into the bloodstream, fats take a different pathway than proteins and carbohydrates. So proteins and carbohydrates, what they'll do is they'll get absorbed, they'll get into the bloodstream, and they'll just immediately head into circulation. They'll be able to just go right into the blood vessels and then head over to the liver through the hepatic portal system to get processed and then get sent out to the body. Fats have to take a different pathway, where instead of going right into the bloodstream, they first go into the lymphatic system through these lacteals, which are the green structures here, and then from the lacteals and the lymphatic system, they'll go up to the jugular, and at that point, everything from the lymphatic system always just gets emptied back into circulation, and that's how the fats will get there, instead of the other way, which is how the other stuff gets there. Okay. So that is where villi and lacteal only on that model there. So now, general structures of the small intestine. So for the small intestine, we have three main areas. So there's the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. So the duodenum is the very first part of the small intestine. It's only about 1 foot long. It's very small, but it's really important. So if you imagine right here, where we had all of these things that were getting produced and emptied into the small intestine, this location of where all of these substances get emptied in is in the very first part, that first 1 foot of small intestine called the duodenum. So the duodenum is really important because there is a lot of digestion that occurs there. This is actually where the majority of digestion occurs in the entire digestive system, is in that very first part of the small intestine, because of the fact that we have all of these substances that are getting emptied into that area. So on your models, it's going to be, after we leave the pyloric sphincter, there's a little part that's cut off when we have that ampulla that empties in there. That is the duodenum, that very first region. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. All right, so then for the rest of the small intestine, we have the jejunum and the ileum. The distinction between these two areas is a little bit more vague. Basically the jejunum is going to be the superior top, so the superior top part of the rest of the small intestine. So all of this is small intestine. The top part here is going to be jejunum, and then the end part of the ileum of the small intestine is the ileum. Okay, so the bottom here. On your models, it has the number 14, which is supposed to represent just the small intestine in general, and then A near the top is the jejunum, and then B is representing the ileum, which is the bottom. And if I wanted to ask these two parts, I would make sure that it's really clear that I'm talking about the top part. I wouldn't do it like halfway in the middle.